Hello, this is Kevin Scanlon with All City Real Estate. As you may know, here at All City, we are big believers in a collaborative agent world, an industry where knowledge and information can cross broker boundaries such that we're all held to a higher standard, that we can all strive to be that fiduciary at the highest possible level. And to that end, I want to talk to you today about a nuanced layer of some of the changes that took place to our contracts and addenda on January 1st. Those changes went mandatory January 1, and one of the most important changes was the moving of the financial information from paragraph 4 of the 1 to 4 family resale contract to the third party financing addendum. And specifically what we're talking about here is the information contained in paragraph B of the third party financing addendum. And that paragraph addresses the worthiness in the lender's eyes of the buyer to receive the loan and of the property to qualify for the loan. So as I said, that information prior to January 1 was contained in paragraph 4 of the 1 to 4 family. But because it is now contained in the third party financing addendum, which obviously, because it's an addendum, is not mandatory for transactions, even if the buyers are getting third party financing, if they're getting a loan, it's still up to the buyer to choose whether or not that addendum will be used and provide them with the protection that it affords. Here's what we're talking about. In paragraph B of the third party financing addendum, you have first the buyer's worthiness in the lender's eyes to receive the loan, and you have two choices when it comes to that in third party financing addendum, and those two choices are: this contract is subject to the buyer being approved for the terms listed above in paragraph A, or no, the contract is not subject to the buyer being approved. And in this market of multiple offers and the accepted offer being well over list price, obviously one of the biggest concerns that we run into in those situations is appraisals and the property not appraising. Well, be careful, because prior to January 1, if you used a 1 to 4 family contract and the property didn't appraise, your buyer was automatically protected. If the lender said, you're not approved, the property is not approved because the appraisal came in low. That information was contained in paragraph 4. Now it's in the third party financing addendum. And so if we're in a multiple offer situation and you don't understand the nuanced layers of this situation, and you say, you know what, my buyers are well qualified, they're putting 40% down, they have a 750 credit score, their tax and income information is absolutely impeccable, they don't need this protection, and they understand the ramifications of not using this, but it's going to look better in the seller's eyes because it's one less out that the buyer has. You have to be careful, because if you're coming in 10 or 20 or 30 or $50,000 over list and you're not using third party financing addendum, then guess what? That second part of paragraph B of that addendum says that if the property does not meet with the lender's approval, then the buyer can escape the contract. In other words, if the appraisal comes in low and the lender says, we're not approving this loan because the appraisal is too low, then the buyer can get out of it. Well, if you've chosen not to use the third party financing addendum because it's a multiple offer situation and you want that buyer to have the upper hand, they are no longer protected by that caveat either. So the bottom line is, if you want that protection in terms of the appraisal, then you still use the third party financing addendum. However, you simply check the box in the first part of paragraph B that says the contract is not subject to the buyer being approved. So this, as I said, is a very nuanced notion when it comes to these topics. And if you have questions, you should call your broker, call the TAR legal hotline. If all else fails, call me. I will be happy to to answer any questions that I can. My number is 512-775-3846. I wish you the best of luck finishing out your year strong, and if you ever need anything at all, always feel free to give me a shout. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.